Well, welcome everyone to our first session for our speakers from Microsoft and EA. And so our first speaker is Ms. Chanelle Brema, the senior producer in gaming and technology at Electronic Arts. She's currently a producer for Apex Legends, a well-known battle royale video game, and her focus is on new character development, but she has a varied and awesome background of experience, and so we're just very happy to welcome her today. You see her contact information up here, and without further ado, I'd like to have her begin her presentation, and also in the chat, if you'll put in your questions that you might have, Deb and Adam and I will direct questions along the question and answer session near the end of her presentation. And then at 2 o'clock, we'll have our next speaker. So, Chanelle?
Hello, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Chanelle Brema, and I've been in the video game industry for 15 plus years. And I'm excited to be here and to talk to all of you and share a bit about my career path and career journey. So with that, let's see. A couple of things that I would just recommend to all of you is to think about when you are considering your career and what you're going to do next. Make sure that you think big. You know, a lot of times we might think about, oh, I'm going to be a chef or I'm going to be an engineer, but you might want to be a chef for the president, or you might want to be a chef that has your maybe some interesting new types of foods that you bring to the table, bring to the world. And so just go big when you're visualizing where you're going to go. Now, also be open to possibilities, because usually there are people who are very intentional about their career. They know their career path they want to take and where it's going to lead to in each step along the way. But a lot of people spend their career just kind of trying new things and new possibilities. And just be open to those. And also last, be fearless. Do not be afraid of making mistakes. That is how you learn. That is how you get data. Failure is just a piece of data that you can use to make decisions and figure out where you want to go next. Elon Musk is probably making a lot of mistakes at the moment, but they're not failures. They're not mistakes, really. They're just gathering data so that he knows what to do next to get us to Mars, to get us to the moon, to get us colonies. You know, I mean, I know we're getting there already, but you know what I mean. So with that, the other last piece is find your passion. And this is where I'm going to start talking about my career, how I was open to possibilities and what sort of happened to me. So think about what your passions are, because that is what will get you through the hard times in your career. In the video game industry, there are times when we have very long hours, or we're pushing really hard to get something to a certain date and get it released. And it's your passion that gets you through those hard times. So searching for what you're interested in. Me, it's video games, it's writing, and it's innovation and technology. And that's kind of a pattern you see throughout my career. So how did I get in video game industry? Well, I didn't know anything about it. And then I started playing video games with a boyfriend of mine and beat my first game. And it was so thrilling and so exciting. And I was like, oh, how can I turn this into a career? How can I think big about this? And so I also thought about how at that time, video games weren't being marketed to females. And I was like, wow, I could bring something to this industry. I could help influence this industry, and I can maybe make a change. And so that's what got me interested in the video game industry. I started out in Xbox and first party, and what we call first party development, and that's where developing some games like Fable, and I guess that was one of my first games, so that was really exciting and fun to work on. And I started at like the lowest level, right? I was setting up computer stations. I was shadowing the program managers that I wanted to learn how to get into that position. I was demoing games at press and at E3. And while I was at E3 demoing, I had this networking opportunity where I got roomed with and paired up with a senior program manager who she had been in the industry for a little while, and I got to meet her and got to know her. And networking is also an important piece and part of your career as you get to know people. So anyway, throughout my career, I also tried different things and was open to different possibilities. And I transitioned to a publishing and developer role where I was working with partners. And some of my favorite partners that I worked with were like Harmonix and Bethesda. I worked with them for 5 years, and I got to do really cool, innovative things like how do you test a controller that is a drum set, that you're going through the menu of the game using a drum set? How do you create really good, intuitive UI interface for people using something like Connect, which was like new technology where it was your body was now the controller, and what you did would change what's happening on the menu. So these are the kind of cool things that I got to really experience, and it was super fun. And I also thought about expanding my skill set. So there was a period of time right in between working in the first party development, working with partners, where I took a year and a half and I went over somewhere else within Microsoft to expand my skill set. And I learned more about internal communications, and I learned about podcasts and, websites and doing things like that, which was not what I had been doing in the video game industry. But everything you do is a building block. And I have my little Minecraft block there as a little nod towards me spending time at Minecraft, but it's very applicable. It's you're building the blocks. Your building blocks are what you use to leverage the next steps in your career. So here's where things that I had done beforehand or the networking that I did really made a difference in my life that I hadn't expected. And I met and had lunch with that woman that I had been partnered with at E3 years before. And we were sitting down at lunch and we were catching up on all the stuff we'd been doing. And I told her, all the different skill sets and working with partners, learning communications, that type of thing. And she was like, wow, your skill sets are exactly what we're looking for this new thing that we're working on. And I'm looking to hire somebody that has your skill sets. And I was like, great, what are you doing? And she goes, I can't tell you. It's future technology. And nobody knows, and we can't really tell you. But you should interview. And I was like, what? I'm going to interview for something that I have no idea what it is? Well, I did notice that there were very smart people working on this, and people that I had known previously in other groups that I'd worked in. And I thought, okay, they must be doing something really cool. So I interviewed for it, and it turned out it was HoloLens, right? And we were working on augmented reality during a period of time where it was just prototyping, sort of pie in the sky. It was future technology that was almost leapfrogging, right, and striving ahead, and it was very fun. And so that's how sometimes your career goes. It's just these moments, and it may feel very random, but you're sort of connecting the dots, right? So also when I talked about like being, don't be afraid of trying new things. There was, after HoloLens, I decided to take a couple of years off to learn how to write a novel. I was like, I told you, video games, writing, innovation are my passions. So I thought, well, I want to learn how to do storytelling. And I took a couple of years off to do that. And you'll see later how that also applied and led into more things in my career. So after a little while, of course, as I was taking courses at the University of Washington and doing writing courses, after a couple of years, I ran out of money, needed to go back. And so I looked to my other passion and to get back into games. And it was really nice because I landed at a really great spot. I was at Minecraft, and I was a lead producer for the Oculus Rift and Gear VR, and getting Minecraft onto that. And that was super fun. I loved that. And the reason I got that was because they had looked at my experiences at HoloLens. And so one thing sort of led to another. While I was at Minecraft, I got to know somebody who had their own startup called Wanderword. It's an audio-based storytelling platform, and text-to-speech and speech recognition. And he was looking for somebody who knew authors in the Seattle area that could bring content to his platform. And it was in a beta stage at that point, and it was really fun because I got to take all my skill sets that up to this point that I had been working on here and there, and you would think were very random, but you could connect those dots. And it was amazing because I was taking traditional authors and teaching them about game loops and teaching them about narrative branching, and at the same time taking all my writing skill set of storytelling and sort of putting it all together. And it was really fun. As you know, I'm currently on Respawn Apex Legends. Again, with my narrative background and storytelling background, I feel very privileged that I get to work with the narrative team and the animation team, all the teams that are like making characters come to life in Apex Legends. So whether it is with intention or without intention, everything you do is building up to greatness, and it's building up to something. And so don't be afraid to try new things, because those will add into what you're doing. And that is all I wanted to share with you guys at this point. But there's so much more I could say, so much more I could cover. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or, follow me on my blog. So, yeah, that's my journey.
Great. Thank you, Chanelle, so much. So I see a comment in the chat that Jason put in for us. He said that he truly feels the future of XR and AR will be similar to the sci-fi technology that Mass Effect and Commander Shepard's crew were showcasing. And the future technology, and it would be incredible if EA goes all in with XR and AR technology. So just a comment.
I mean, it is definitely one of my passions. As you can see, I've worked in both with, mixed reality. So I've had AR and VR, and I would not be surprised if I end up back in it at some point. And I know that I believe in it as a future for sure. So, yeah.
Well, we'd be happy to give opportunity for our attendees to hop on a mic and ask a question if they'd like. I see one posted here in the chat from Olivia at Boise State. Can you talk about how you decided to take time off to write?
Yeah, that was, it wasn't frivolous. I'll say that. It definitely took some time to make it a reality. It was something that I had been writing a novel on the weekends and, sometimes here or there in between my day job of working with partners. And I had about 2/3 of a novel written, and I thought, gosh, if I could just get some time to dedicate it to it, I could get this complete, I can market it, I could get it out there. And I spent, I think, about 2 years like paying off credit card debt, paying off my car, putting money in savings. So, it was very intentional. And when I got the opportunity to just take, I was originally going to take just a year off, I went for it because I was like, this is something I planned and I really want to do. And it was funny because at that point in time, I took what I had written and finally shared it with somebody who was very knowledgeable about the writing, industry. And she replied back and she was like, okay, you're a good writer. There's, that's good, but you have a lot of work to do. And then she kind of just tore apart what I had. But her main point was I had written book 2 and I needed to write book 1. And that was devastating. I was like, what? I had to start from scratch at book 1 and just create, but she was right. And so I spent 2 years writing book 1, and that's how I went about doing it. And yeah, so
That's great. Thank you. We do have a hand raised from Naja and then Sam.
Hi, I'm Nadia from the University of Baltimore. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I just wanted to ask one question. What do you think is like the most unexpected thing being a part of your job, something that you went in and didn't expect really to be part of the job?
Yeah, for where I'm at now, what surprised me was, I mean, I was on Minecraft for quite a while, and with Minecraft, we don't do mocap. We don't have voice actors doing, voiceovers. We do have audio people who do sound effects, but coming in and into Apex Legends, there's a whole system of supporting these new characters that are coming in, and so much diligence put around the talent that gets hired for the voiceover, for the mocap, and getting to be involved in that was something that I wasn't really expecting, and it was very surprising. And it's so much fun to see people, all the different people that make these characters come to life, everything from writing the background bios to the animators interpreting, what kind of movement would this type of character do, and then hiring the talent to help them make it, help that process as well. So that was surprising to me.
That's so interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question.
All right, Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam. Not sure if my audio working properly.
Yes.
Okay. So as a senior producer, do you need to focus on leadership activities often, or are you mainly in the production side? And is there much of a difference between the two?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, at Respawn, when I was hired at Respawn, I'm actually titled just producer there, because when I was hired, was flat organization, which is kind of, and it's almost like every corporation or place you go, they have different interpretations of titles. You can be, anything from like an associate producer to producer to senior producer to lead producer and senior producer can mean different things. But to answer your question about what type of, difference there is between a leadership role and a more, I guess, like, what I think of as like an execution role, right? So you can have where you are working, both sets of titles can be working with everyone across the team. Like you might be working with engineers and artists and designers, but usually if you're growing in your career and starting your career, what you're doing is a lot of what I call the execution part of it, right? You're making sure that the check boxes are happening, right? Everything's are getting done on a timely manner, and you're unblocking the team if there's something that's blocking them. And if you're at a more leadership level, you might be looking more strategically across the whole development process. You might be looking at systems across and like how to make improvements across the studio, or you might be thinking about new features long term, how to make sure those features are going to be healthy. You might be looking more at like data analysis and how that impacts design. So does that give you some ideas?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
So we have a question in the chat. Loved the presentation, the comment was, and what do you do day to day as a producer?
Okay, well, I talked a little bit about that in the last question, but to give more like a day-to-day, it varies again on like what project you're working on. So I'll give you some examples. When I was on Minecraft and was working on the Oculus Gear VR version, at that point in time, we didn't have as much data around AR development, especially, or VR development, sorry. So like being immersed in that virtual reality and how that impacts the user, the player. And so my team was very, very busy. I had a sort of senior engineers that were working on this, and they were heads down on trying to get things to release, and they didn't have enough time for usability research, but we needed that, and we needed that information to come back to the team so they could we could all make decisions on what we would focus on making better, like jumping in Minecraft. Now you're in virtual reality jumping, and now people are getting not feeling that great. So how do we make this better, right? And so I, as a producer, sometimes what you're doing is you're filling in the gaps. You're jumping in to help the team in areas where they either don't have the time to focus, or you are helping things to get done. So even though my day-to-day was helping the team to think about priorities and what bugs we were fixing or what features we were trying to get in within what timeline, I was also sitting there pushing builds to phones and getting phones over to our user research that was doing the research. I was watching user research, taking notes so that I could bring it back to the team so they could have immediate feedback, things like that. At Respawn, what I'm doing is I am working actually very closely with 3 teams: the narrative team, that's the writing team, and then I'm working with our tech art team, which is doing like rigging of characters and creating tools for animation and art team, and then I'm working with the animation team on characters. And so I do a lot of context switching. As a producer, you might find yourself doing that. You might be talking to one team that has a particular needs, and then another team, another needs, and then another team, different things. And so right now I'm in a lot of meetings. I'm driving a lot of discussions. I am helping them to plan ahead. These are all the types of things that you would do day to day.
Great. We have a hand raised. Riley?
Hey, this is Riley from Embry-Riddle. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I'm a little interested in you elaborating a little on your background before the game industry and what that initial jump was like, kind of coming into it.
Sure. So I will fully own that when I was in college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do or be, and I picked education as my major because I wanted to be educated. That's not how that works. It actually means you want to be a teacher, right? And you want to be an educator. Turns out I did want to be an educator when I found that out. I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense because teaching is a gift for me. It really comes naturally, and I love working with children and everything. So I initially became a teacher, and I taught language arts and history in middle school. And I really enjoyed it, but I also wasn't sure it was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And as I said, earlier, I was playing video games with my boyfriend at the time. I was thinking about how I was living in a city where there was, a lot of technology happening. Microsoft was there. I got into the Xbox Live beta, and for the first time experienced playing games across the country with people and people talking. And it was just so exhilarating. And I was like, okay, this would be so cool to be part of this industry. And so I started networking, reaching out to recruiters, reaching out to HR people at Microsoft, in Xbox. I really decided that that's where I wanted to be. And I made the leap. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. We have someone, actually, it's Israel, who says he's a huge Titanfall 2 fan.
Yeah.
Me too. And his girlfriend plays Apex Legends and saw the new North Star trailer that came out today and was wondering if you may have had anything to do with writing it.
So I didn't write the trailer or have much to do with writing it, but our new character that is coming out is the first full character that I did work on from beginning to end, in the sense that obviously our writers were writing, her background and her storyline and things like that. And then, as I said, I was working with the artists who worked on her model and the animators that have been working on her. We have our animation team gives a lot of feedback on the trailers, but they don't do the animations themselves. They don't have the time because they're working on the in-game content more so. So we definitely saw it as it progressed through, but yeah. So I'm super excited for this next release that's coming out, I think in the next week, and it has a lot of features that I've been able to work on. So pretty exciting.
Well, I'll just have to say I'm a huge Fable fan, played them all, and really did love that game. And and even go back through it occasionally just for fun.
Mhm.
So we have another question from Brandon. He says, we often apply the technology you've worked with for utilitarian purposes, navigation, etc. Do you feel that the gamification of daily life through XR tech could provide psychological and or quality of life benefits?
Yeah, I think when I was at HoloLens, we were doing a lot of research on how could the, how could this be applied to life? And it wasn't looking at just games, of course. It was looking at, everything from virtual shopping to having training across, right? So you could have somebody teaching you how to cook or teaching you how to be a mechanic and have that augmented reality experience. And I think a lot of our sci-fi has already predicted, different ways in which this could really help the future and help the now even. And so I fully believe in it as someday we will have it be very prolific in everyday life. And it's just, a matter of getting the technology right, the hardware right, and for it to be affordable. But, there are interesting challenges that were fun as I was working early on in the industry in it is, for example, I'll give you Gear VR and Oculus Rift were initially tested with military men, right? The headsets and the equipment, and it was all tested with military men. And a little bit later, right, there I am with a Gear VR that I take home with some Minecraft on it that I want to share with my family and get some feedback. And I take it, home, and I'm like, hey, to my 16-year-old niece, I'm like, come check this out, right? And I made sure it was super cleaned because, you can't have any smudges on it. That can be very difficult. And she puts it on, of course, having to remove her ponytail because military men don't have big hair and they don't have big ponytails. So, you have to adjust that. And then she gets it on and she's like, it's blurry. Chanelle, it's blurry. I can't. I'm like, no, I just cleaned it. She's like, no, I can't see. I'm like, well, adjust the top. No, it's blurry. I'm like, all right, hand it over. She hands it over and I look inside and there is just smears of mascara, just all smudging on the inside, because military men probably didn't have a lot of mascara that was in long lashes that could. And so I think that the biggest thing is that if we're going to have it broad appeal, that everything's being tested with diversity in mind, right? Diverse audiences, diverse cultures, diverse people. That's how you get to those sort of gotchas of headsets not fitting on teenagers because they're used to being set for military men, but and things like that. So sorry, that was a little bit long-winded, but that's my thought process.
Good points. Well, I will remind everyone that you can continue to pop questions in the chat. But make sure that you're using the Microsoft Speakers event chat. I've been pulling some comments over from our earlier session and posting them in here. And Chanelle, if you have time and would like to stick around for a few minutes after the hour, you can certainly continue to interact with the students in the chat. I would love if everyone, if you would like to, this is optional, but if you'd like to pop on your camera, I can take a picture of all of us in together mode, and we'll fill up this little theater in together mode if you're interested and want to have your picture taken with Chanelle and the Suits team.
And did I stop sharing? I'm not sure. I'm trying to. Okay, I did. Okay.
I'm going to give everyone just another 30 seconds or minute or so to just turn on your camera if you'd like to be in the picture. All right. 10-second countdown for cameras. 2, 1. All right, if you're not on, get on quick. Here comes the picture. And I got it.
That's
Great.
awesome.
I'll share that with everyone in the chat, and we'll also we'll try to send that out, put it on Pronto, so you can have the picture. And thank you, Chanelle, for your time, and students and faculty and anyone else that might be joining. Feel free to continue to ask questions in the chat. Thank you, Chanelle. So at this point, I would like to welcome our next speaker, and our next speaker is Ms. Mugay Wood. And Mugay is joining us from the Microsoft Houston Technology Center, where she is a director. And she's going to talk to us today about her role and how she came to be in this position and the great things and work that she's doing with Microsoft. So without further ado, welcome, Mugay.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Hi, Brandon. Hi, NASA team, and our awesome students who have joined us this week. I am very excited to be with you here today. This is my second Suits Challenge, and I know it is an amazing event full of creativity, collaboration, and really shaping the future. So I'm really excited to be with you today. I will share a few slides as reference, so please let me know when you are able to see them. Is it coming through?
It is coming through.
Okay, excellent. So I will spend a little bit of time talking about my career path, my current role, what day-to-day looks like, and what we are seeing as far as emerging technology is continuing to shape the way we learn, live, and work. My name is Mugay Wood, and I am currently leading the Microsoft Houston Technology Center. I've been with Microsoft for about 16 years, and my very early stages of my career really started with my education in a Bachelor's of Science degree in Electrical Engineering. I am originally from Turkey. I was born and raised in Turkey. I got my science degree at the time from the first private university of Turkey. At the time, that was a big deal. After getting my electrical engineering degree, I realized that I would like to combine engineering discipline with business for technical leadership roles that I realized I would be interested in. So in 1991, it is some time ago now, I come to the United States for my MBA degree on a scholarship from Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Following my education, my first career, big job was with Accenture Consulting Company. I was at Accenture for about 10 years, starting in the typical consulting career path as an analyst and moving from there on up to consultant, manager, and senior manager type of roles. And those 10 years spent at Accenture have given me fantastic foundational background, have given me a lot of experience working with different companies. And my specialty at Accenture was working with chemicals and energy industry customers, organizations, to help them design their business processes for greater efficiency, effectiveness, and integration. So I had the chance to work with organizations like Dow Chemical, Celanese Chemical, ExxonMobil Chemical, etc. And I remember one of my really awesome projects was to help design the business processes for the startup plant that ExxonMobil had in Baton Rouge for a new polypropylene plant. So it included spending time at the plant, understanding inventory management, logistics, logistics, transportation processes to make sure the systems are designed to be able to handle the production capacity that they were aiming for. After my about 10 years at Accenture, that was actually quite travel heavy. I wanted to make a bit of a career change, and looking at many companies, I had a chance to either have experience in or get exposure to Microsoft. Really stood out to me as a company that I would be proud to work at and be part of. So I joined Microsoft in Houston about 16 years ago. And in those 16 years, I had a lot of different great experiences, all of them in frontline technical leadership roles, working with our customers. So I had a chance to work with our Microsoft 365 product line, Microsoft Azure, our business application portfolio, Dynamics 365, and my current job that I have been in for 5 years has really been an excellent culmination of all of that. So when we look at the Microsoft Technology Centers, I'll go into that a little bit more. It's really a destination that our customers come to experience possibilities with Microsoft Cloud Services. So all of my prior background working with different capabilities really came together towards cross workload solution areas that we can help our customers in. From a personal standpoint, I love travel. That's one of the things I think that have attracted and fueled my passion to come from Turkey to the States. I love travel. I love change. I like seeing different experiences, how others live and how they view life. And I am still a global traveler as much as possible. I also have a lot of passion on the possibilities that technology presents to everybody in the society, students, youth, women, everybody. So I am part of the Women's Energy Network of Houston. I also work closely with the Greater Houston Partnership to look for ways to attract tech talent to Houston as we see continued interest of tech companies in Texas overall. My family, you see on the left-hand side, that was our last travel destination more than a year ago in Grand Cayman. I have 2 sons. Matthew in orange is a freshman at UT Austin for a chemical engineering degree. And Michael, even though he's younger but taller, he's graduating this year from high school to go to A&M for a business degree. So staying quite busy. I want to focus in on my current job a bit more. So I mentioned Microsoft Technology Centers. So Microsoft Technology Centers is a destination that, as I mentioned, we work with our customers to help envision possibilities with Microsoft Cloud Services. We have a center in Houston. We also have 15 centers in the US. In many of the destinations, big cities that you can imagine, and we have about 50 globally. And that is a very nice network of not only facilities, but team of architects to work with our customers. On the right-hand side, you see the picture of our envisioning center that all of our MTCs have. This is essentially a movie theater-like setting where we demonstrate what technology can enable for end-to-end business process execution. And of course, many of the emerging technologies like HoloLens, AR are part of that experience. So that's why I'm so excited that you are actively, practically working to incorporate those technologies into the current challenge at hand. So talking a little bit about what we do, when we talk about Microsoft Technology Centers, it's really 3 components that come into play. One is the place. it's an experiential place with a lot of different experiences that we set up from Microsoft and our network of partners. While place is important, even more important is our team of architects who help deliver a variety of engagements for our customers. Depending on where an organization is, we may start out with an envisioning workshop, which is really talking about what is possible to transform either an existing business process or create a net new capability. And after that, we do a lot of whiteboarding sessions for architecture design. And each of the engagements that we have for our customers is unique and tailored to their specific requirements, for their specific portfolio of applications, businesses, and organizational culture. We also do a lot of hackathons with our customers. That is typically hands-on experience in their environment with their data, with some coaching and guidance from our architects that results in a prototype which they can then build upon and socialize internally towards a minimum viable product that is getting ready for production. As we have been operating in the pandemic mode for almost more than a year now, we also had to make adjustments in terms of how we engage with our customers. So we have transitioned to a completely virtual mode. And initially, we were concerned, how is this going to work? Because place has been a very important part of our experience. And it still is. As a matter of fact, we are continuing to invest in our MTCs to create the next generation of experiences. So that's positive. But we evolved to virtual mode and how to create engaging meetings using whiteboard. And of course, Teams has been a big part of that. And what we found is, especially architecture design sessions and hackathons have proven to be very engaging and high demand experiences. Our customers really love to build things, break out in teams, interact with one another, see a whiteboard. So really, get away from long presentations and more focus on building things and designing solutions with a lot of breaks. So we have been pretty effective. At the same time, we are also looking forward to leveraging our facilities as well. Actually, to that end, I would like to share a rendition of our newly designed interactive center at the Microsoft Houston Technology Center. Each MTC focuses on an industry that may be dominant in their geography. For us in Houston, it's the energy industry. So we have redesigned our center to create a more open, engaging, and inviting experience for our customers and partners who visit us. We are going to be showcasing our solutions from Microsoft and our partners against the energy industry value chain, so we can go even deeper into the kind of value that we can bring to those segments. What I'm most excited about is in our redesign, we are going to put a spotlight on sustainability as well, in terms of how we can help the industry with CO2 management, wastewater treatment. We have a story of how Microsoft approaches it for our own resources and the platform that Microsoft provides to help other companies track emissions, be able to act on it proactively. So updates are currently in progress, and we are going to complete all of this, including the updating of our envisioning theater by end of June. So hopefully we can host a number of you as the opportunity presents itself when we return back to the offices. So really excited about the different opportunities. So in terms of experiences that are really emerging and getting top of mind attention, many of our customers we work with are really asking us how to move to remote operations, more connected experiences. This was always a goal and a topic of conversation, but it has really picked up momentum in the pandemic era. So HoloLens is a big part of it, with remote assist and guides functionality towards the zero-touch operations. You may have heard of this. We have also announced Microsoft Mesh not long ago, which is to create virtual, engaging experiences as though you are in the same place. So, together mode as an example in Teams is exciting, but this is really taking it to the next level and almost in a way, a bit of a gamification of virtual collaboration as well, where we can feel more present through our avatars and see the engagement to be to have that sense of presence. Finally, I wanted to call out the tremendous interest that we are seeing around the digital twin concept and the next generation of IoT solutions. Many of the customers we work with have interest to replicate the physical structures for training, for simulation, and for remote management of operations. So that continues to stay very strong as well. And the application range is really astounding. I talk a lot about energy industry, but recently I've spoken to the CEO of USA Skateboarding Organization. They are looking at seeing how they can leverage digital twins and HoloLens to train our Olympic athletes. They have renditions of the different skateboarding paths. How can they use that for that purpose? But also, how can they create immersive experiences to attract youth to the sport of skateboarding? So it's just so many exciting possibilities ahead of us, and you are in the midst of it as well. And looking forward to really using technology to empower everyone to do more, which is really the mission of Microsoft, and more means different things for different organizations. But we are excited about the possibilities that technology presents us. So I will stop here and see if you have any comments, questions, anything that you are curious about.
Great, thank you. If you do have a question, if you'd like to raise your hand. I'm sorry, I think my microphone arm was not down. Thank you, Mugay. And if you have a question, please just raise your hand or you can put it into the chat. Mugay, if you want to stop sharing your screen, just in case. There we go. Looks like we have a question. Sorry, I can't see who, but
I see one
please
question.
Introduce yourself.
I see a couple comments from Michael and one from Sam. It's amazing to see the implementation of technology in so many different areas. I completely agree. That's what makes it so interesting. We obviously really appreciate the work that NASA is doing, but we also work a lot with healthcare institutions. Digital twins and HoloLens really provide a great training and simulation opportunity for students on, let's say, surgery procedures. And then we are talking about, skateboarding and just sports of any kind, really, to be able to create that immersive experience. So That's very true. Have I been surprised by the use of a product that was unexpected or not intended? Yes, absolutely. I think I'll give one example. This is, I just end up mentioning product and service names, which I can't get away from, but I'll mention one that we are seeing a tidal momentum around, which is Microsoft's Power Platform. It is Microsoft's platform for low-code, no-code development to automate business processes. And it is inclusive of robotic process automation, creating real-time dashboards, and any process you can imagine that has workflow or checklist is subject to improvement. And Power Platform is a very versatile service to help achieve that. And we are seeing so many different creative ways of using that towards automation, field service, and vaccine distribution. It is really astounding, the imagination and creativity that different institutions and organizations create. And this is, to me, technology is a tool. It is the actual application of it that brings it to life. And we see many, many examples of that.
Mugay, we had Olivia had her hand raised. I think she wanted to ask you a question. She may have put it in the chat, but feel free. Olivia?
Yeah, I put it in the chat. I was just really fascinated by the stuff you were saying about digital twins and was wondering where you see them being most impactful.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So we see digital twins be impactful in a number of ways. First is it could be a new construction. Let's say you are building a new plant, a refinery, any kind of facility. Before building it, you can simulate it and sort of, walk through that structure and interact with it. That's one. The other one that we see very impactful is around training and simulation. A lot of the customers we work with are global. And it's not easy to train employees repeatedly. It could be safety procedures. It could be operational procedures. It is not easy to fly people around and provide in-person training, especially now. So being able to replicate physical environments in a digital manner and allowing people to interact with it and simulate that procedure is really impactful. It is cheaper, it's faster, and it can be done as many times as you want. So it really contributes to health and safety as well when we are able to simulate procedures, whether it's for healthcare or refinery related. It could be a number of scenarios. Some of our partners also do some great work with digital twins. I will call out Bentley as an example. They are one of our partners in our ecosystem who has been doing some amazing work there.
Great. Thank you for that question, Olivia. We have another in the chat. Love the presentation. Can you tell us more about the skateboarding simulation using digital twins? I think some of that you've covered a little bit. And then adding to that, what are the precautions that you take using AR while doing or during physical activities like the sports that you've described?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that is probably calls out to the difference between complete immersive virtual experience versus augmented reality. Because in technologies like Oculus Rift, you can be completely immersed in the virtual world with no awareness of the physical space around you. With augmented reality, with a device like HoloLens as an example, we are bringing in the virtual and physical world together. So when you're interacting with something in the virtual replica, you still have the presence around you, the physical structure. So if you're making a particular move, you can see that there's a table there as an example. So I think that's one example of bringing the physical and virtual worlds together. A lot of times, in order to make these capabilities come to life, we need very strong renditions and replicas of the physical world, and we need the applications that run on these compute devices to simulate the environment. But I do appreciate the awareness of physical world combined with the virtual world, so that we are not falling and stumbling in the physical environment that we are in.
And I see, thank you, and I see that Naja has her hand raised. So Naja.
Hi, this is Najia from the University of Baltimore. I wanted to just thank you for explaining everything and going through everything with us, and it's really interesting what you've been working on. My question was, how can students like myself get involved with the work you're doing? Like, are there any student programs that you could share with us?
That's a great question. I think a couple ways. Number one is Microsoft offers internship opportunities to college students. So if you go to Microsoft.com and do a bit of a research and look up, I think you can see that. So there's internship opportunities. They are typically run out of Seattle as a central location, but accessible to individuals nationally and globally. And then the second piece is we have Imagine Cup, which is a college level design challenge using different, really your choice of the scenario that you bring to life. We are actually, for the first time this year, we're expanding it to high school students as well, because we have a lot of talent and creativity at that level also. And thirdly, I would say all the great work that you are doing, that this participation here included, also posted on LinkedIn, and enrich your profiles for visibility and awareness. We also have AR communities, some of which are managed by Microsoft, that you can be part of. So a number of channels. I'll say the kind of work that you guys are doing here really are impactful for not only our society, but for your careers as well. So do not be shy about sharing those on LinkedIn, and be part of the community with technologies of interest to you.
Thank you so much. I
Sure.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Mugay, so much for spending your time with us today. I'd like to, at this point, welcome everyone. If you'd like to turn on your camera, we'll do another group picture with Mugay, and I'll be able to put that out for each of you to copy or to save.
As we do that, I'll say, please reach out to me via LinkedIn if you would like to connect and continue our conversation and connection. LinkedIn is a good hub for us to do that. So happy to accept all your connection invitations if you choose to do that.
That's great. We'll do about 15 more seconds, give everyone time to be ready, prepared for the picture. Three, two, one. All right, I'm going to set it up and going to take our picture. Give me just a second. All right, everyone smile. Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. And again, thank you, Mugay, for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Best wishes for this week, as well as continued success. We are huge fans of NASA. Actually, our briefing rooms at the Houston Technology Center is named after NASA missions. We have Apollo, Endeavor, Discovery. So we really appreciate what you do and your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. And now it's time for us to welcome our third speaker today. Ms. Charisma Williams is the lead product UI UX designer, product manager for Microsoft. And we'd like to welcome Charisma to the meeting. And we're very happy to have you with us.
Hello. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay.
We have you loud and clear.
Awesome, awesome. So my name's Charisma Williams. I've been in the design industry for a long time. Mostly, I've been infamous probably from the work I've done in the video game industry, which has always been focused in the UI, UX space. But I've also had the opportunity to spend quite a bit of time in emerging tech. So part of the Connect launch team, part of HoloLens launch team. I've also worked over at Oculus VR on some of their stuff. And currently, I actually work on the security team at Microsoft. And part of what we do is help secure all of Xbox gaming, Windows, and devices. So had quite an interesting trek. But I think that you guys will find it pretty interesting. I also want to introduce my dog Yoshi, who I'm sure we will hear from, even though he's a busy executive at Nintendo. He tends to find ways to interject himself into these sort of presentations. So I talked kind of briefly about my career, kind of spanning across quite a few different industries, as well as sort of lots of different areas of focus. A lot of people are going to tell you as you start to look toward a career that focus is really important. And I just want to say that there's lots of ways you can look at focus. For me, my focus has always been on UI, UX, and the entertainment sort of sphere. So no matter what I'm working on, even when I did work on Windows Phone, I'm still working on sort of the entertainment like apps and stuff that were kind of built into the OS. The more kind of breadth you have throughout your career, the easier it is for you to sort of like innovate, bring new ideas into new spaces. So I highly recommend it, and it's a good way for you not to get bored. So when you start to like think about your career, for me, being a big gamer, I like to think about it like building out an RPG character. As you know, those of you who play games, you usually start out with like a base class. And if you like the work that you've been doing for NASA, you're probably part of the Innovator class. So some of the pillars of those people who do well in this class of characters, so to speak, is curiosity. If you're someone who's always curious about how things work, why things are working, why things aren't working, no matter where you are, for me, I'm always amazed watching how efficient McDonald's can handle their drive-through, for instance, right? It's a lot of pipeline and logistics there. That's, I don't know, it's very curious how they're able to take that data back at corporate and continue to streamline those sort of things. If you love problem solving, you're probably part of this Innovator class, a lot of times, a lot of solutions will actually introduce more problems. And if that gets you excited, then you're definitely on the right path. The other thing
Charisma?
Yes.
I wasn't sure if you're sharing a presentation or not. If you are, we aren't seeing it.
Oh, let's see here. I am. Let's see. There we go. How about now?
Yes, we're seeing a screen now.
Yeah. Whoops. Let's get back in here. Here we go.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
There we go. Yeah. So the other big thing that we look for a lot of times in a lot of these spaces, when we're hiring, is people that are proactive. I think a lot of times we sit back and we problem solve. Sometimes you're just talking with friends, family. You have a great idea, but are you that person who, takes it one step further and actually is proactive about trying to solve that? That's really what we look for. So a lot of times when we're interviewing, we really want to see like examples of problems that you've solved, or attempted to solve, for instance. The other thing is that you're a change agent. You're not really interested in keeping on doing things the same way they've always been done. Now, the key is you kind of have to understand how things have already been done for you to kind of become that change agent. But you feel really comfortable in undefined spaces. Sometimes even the problems aren't fully defined. So these core pillars, if they really sort of excite you, you're probably on track to being kind of this innovator class. So like every RPG, each class has their own set of useful skills. And the innovator class, one of the top skills that obviously comes in is design, you know, and underneath these kind of big skills, there's always a bunch of sub skills, but I'll let you guys sort of like look into that. And I'm sure you've looked into that yourself. You know, design is really, really huge. It's a huge bucket. And it's something that you kind of have to be really interested in and constantly sort of growing. The other side of design is obviously, you know, engineering. So actually building out those sort of things. Like you don't have to love how to code, but you should really have some fundamental understanding of, you know, how things are put together. You know, even if you take a logic class and just sort of understanding that. You know, in my career, what I learned was, you know, being somewhat of a hybrid was, you know, designers who had kind of an engineering understanding. You know, your documentation is a lot clearer. It's a lot easier for you to get, you know, things actually produced that are closer to what you imagine, because you sort of understand like the building blocks behind it. You know, and from the engineering side, you know, I've taken jobs where I just do the engineering side. Having an understanding of design is also sort of critical. And so this sort of hybrid mentality, I think we'll see more of. And when you're in these sort of innovation spaces, a lot of times you're going to see that there's a lot of hybrid minds there. It seems to work really, really well. Another big skill I think a lot of people overlook is prototyping. You know, how do you prototype for HoloLens if you don't have access to HoloLens, right? Sometimes I think we all forget how lucky we are to have access to all this technology, but not all the best ideas come from people who have access to the actual technology. You know, if you look back in gaming, you know, a lot of the great designers like Miyamoto who did Mario, I mean, he started out with paper prototyping, which seems sort of insane when you look at it. But some of that stuff's online. You can sort of look at how he designed kind of the first, you know, 2 levels. And so if you can be really innovative in prototyping, it's going to be super helpful when you're in these innovative spaces. The other big skill I think also gets overlooked is observation. You know, a lot of the big companies have user research, and it's really cool to be able to sit back and observe and see your ideas fail in real time. I've seen it multiple times where everyone on the team thinks everything's very clear. We put it in user research, and then we all look in horror at, you know, things not happening the way we thought they should happen. So having the skill to be able to observe, not just like your own designs, but just like people in general, like what are people doing in daily life? Like how do people hold devices? You know, what are the ways that people sort of more naturally and intuitively interact with things? You know, all that stuff is sort of going to help you when you're solving problems. Another big skill that I think gets overlooked a lot in these sort of innovational spaces is psychology. A lot of what we're doing when we're designing interfaces is we're trying to help humans interface with technology, right? But then we forget that you need to understand humans, not just the technology. So there's a lot of psychology there around like humans and for example, them not wanting to, you know, change or adapt to new things, or why like the interface, you know, that we saw in the Matrix, you know, waving your hands around doesn't seem to work for a long period of time with humans. You know, there's a lot of psychology there. There's a lot of stuff just around human nature that, you know, it's really important that you can bring all those sort of pieces in. Now, there's other skills, but they're top secret, you know, just like every game, you need to unlock skills to unlock new skills and continue your growth. So throughout my career, like I said, I've done lots of different things, but instead of just talking through, you know, my career or talking about AR or VR, I wanted to sort of like share with you guys some things that I think are kind of like secret formulas that you can use to sort of get ahead. So the first secret ingredient to really help you is no one knows what they are doing. Like, seriously. You're going to listen to a lot of experts and people who are, really good at what they do, who've accomplished lots of things. But the reality is, when you enter a lot of these spaces, especially professionally, like, no one really knows what they're doing. Like, everyone's sort of on the same exploration journey that you guys are on right now. And a good example of that for me is when I first got hired on the Connect team. And we were 6 months from shipping, so I assumed, well, clearly we have a interaction model down, right? Because 6 months from shipping would seem like you can't really come up with a new interaction model in that time frame to get a product out. Well, it turned out we did not have an interaction model that was decided at that time. All we knew was in order for us and our game, which was going to become Connected Ventures, to become the pack-in title, was we were going to do whatever interaction model the Xbox platform team did. Now, I worked with the Xbox platform team in the past, and I sort of knew that the Xbox platform team, well, they were a little bit different than our team. Our team was scrappy, smaller. Xbox platform team was way bigger. They also could fall back on controller support, whereas our team kind of couldn't. And the interaction model that they were looking at seemed a little advanced, but people liked it because they've been messing with it for so long, right? But every time we brought in new people, it seemed like there was a little bit of confusion there, right? Well, that interaction model had very low affordance. It was really hard for people to back out of a decision that they were making, whereas the other interaction model was more of a hover. It wasn't fancy, but people understood, whether they were gamers or not. It really mapped to the mouse, and people knew if they moved their hand back before that, progress filled, that they didn't have to make a decision, right? And so what did we do? Well, of course, we decided, what if we try to implement both of these, right? Our management was like, well, we don't have time for that, So, maybe 3 months from ship, the Xbox platform team kind of realized the way they were going didn't make sense. They reverted everything back to the simpler model. Our team, luckily, we had set up our, interface to be very systematic, and we were able to work really, really hard and then kind of integrate this other interaction model, even though we were leaning toward the other direction with 3 months left to ship. So it's really important to know that, you're going to listen to a lot of people, you're going to hear a lot of things, you're going to read through a lot of papers, but honestly, everyone's on the same journey, and no one really knows what they're doing. And that's what makes it so exciting. Second ingredient is the human focus is often ignored. So one of the things I've learned being in security and dealing with interfaces in security is that, human error is actually the single biggest attack surface in digital systems, right? So in security, we spend a lot of time on the technical side of things and, doing all this stuff and a lot of big words that half the time I don't know what people are talking about. But what we found out time and time again is that if we don't make things clear to the humans that are behind these systems, that doesn't matter, right? If the human doesn't know what toggle to turn on to even enable security, it doesn't matter how good our security systems are if they're not even turned on, right? So when you're dealing with like AR and things like that, you really have to remember that you're dealing with humans first. And if you don't cover that sort of initial ground, no matter how good and how fancy your system is, if a human doesn't know how to toggle, if a human doesn't understand how to switch into a different mode, even though you have all these great modes, then it doesn't really matter. And so it's really, really important to focus on that human side of things as you're doing stuff on the technical side. Another secret ingredient is to remember that the present interaction models cannot be ignored. I always tell the story of when I was working at Valve, who runs Steam, which is probably one of the biggest, stores and platforms for PC gaming out there. One of the things that Valve was looking at is they really wanted to kind of redesign the checkout flow, on Steam. And one of the things they learned over time doing all their research was no matter how good they thought their new checkout flow design was, if it didn't mirror Amazon, people were confused. Amazon was just so big that people kind of expect your checkout model to mirror Amazon. And if it doesn't, people get really, really confused, And so it's really, really important when you're designing a lot of these interaction models is to really sort of think about the foundational sort of interaction models that people already know and understand. And is there a way that you can sort of take these foundational models into these new spaces? It's much more likely that they'll be easily accepted, and it'll be much more likely that you can make it, apply to a wider audience, which is always sort of the goal. So another big thing is, really when you're doing interface, no matter what platform, is to really think about designing stuff as a system. Like systems are key to ensure adaptability and growth, which is what you need when you're in these spaces, right? Always design for change because it's coming, whether you want it to or not. One of the first examples in my career was probably working on Destroy All Humans weapon wheel. We had all these awesome weapons, stuff like shooting cows out of guns and the rainbow weapon, all sorts of great stuff, and I designed this sort of, awesome art. The engineers sort of like, engineered it. There were like 6 weapons, something like that, maybe 7 or 8. And then, of course, as time got closer and we ran user research on some of these weapons and saw not all of them were as fun as maybe we wanted them to be, we started to kind of like cut some of those weapons, right? And it became a lot of work to change this weapon wheel because we had sort of hard coded in instead of building a more flexible system, right? And so always think about things that could potentially change, Another example of that is definitely, when it comes to AR, since you're really integrating it with the real world is dynamic, and we've seen some of these changes in gaming. When I first got in gaming, you would make a static piece of art, whatever color that was would go up in the HUD, and that was that, right? But now gaming is mirroring the real world more and more. And there's a lot of games like The Division by Ubisoft, did a lot of work on this where, now we have dynamic worlds, dynamic environments are always changing. So what happens to your interface, right? If your interface is dark, but now it's night, well, now people can't see it, right? If it's like bright, but now the sun is shining in, they can't really see it, right? And so now what we've done in gaming is a lot of UI and interface you see in gaming, which mirrors a lot of stuff that you see in AR, for example, are actually material systems, so effect systems. And the reason is because these effect systems can dynamically change based on the dynamic environment that's happening in the world as people play the game, right? So when I joined HoloLens really early on, we did a lot of work outside, and that was one of the biggest things. Like, hey, this hologram looks great, in a controlled environment, but it doesn't look so great if the sun happens to shine, in that area. So how do we, build these systems so that like these holograms can sort of adapt in real time? So always sort of think about like systematic design, behind your interfaces. Another secret ingredient is, privacy, accessibility, security, and safety all must be integrated from the start, almost at like a feature level. Like we're really bad about doing this in pretty much everything. A good example of that is, working on Connect, and, Connect actually worked while you were seated because we just never thought about it. The point of Connect was to get people to be active when they were playing Xbox and things like that. However, people with disability, who were stuck in a wheelchair, turned out like they maybe couldn't use controllers, but they could interact with Connect. But because we never really thought about accessibility from the beginning, legally, we really couldn't take any chances of leaving this version in Connect, sadly, because although it was great accessibility, there were so much unknowns around it. That legal was a little bit unsure about that. Same thing with the outside version of early consumer-focused HoloLens, right? Not only do you have a problem with like the lighting and things like that, but like you have a problem around focus, like it should be safer than people looking at their phones, right? But we really don't know if it's safe for the people looking at their phones or not, just because of all the potential distractions that can happen in AR. So that became sort of an issue that legal is very happy to step in and tell you about. Another thing is working on Oculus VR. I think people have talked about sort of how VR is sort of this closed space. There's been a lot of issues around people hurting themselves in their own home and things of that nature. And the Guardian system was something that Oculus sort of came up with to be kind of a safety system. How do you let people know when they're getting too close to a wall? Because these VR experiences are just so immersive. It's so easy to trick the brain, So like all of these like interfaces and designs and things like that, you sort of have to think about a lot of these other issues if you want it to kind of go a little bit further than just your prototype or just something that's like, very hyper focused. And the sixth secret ingredient is to really think beyond constraints if you can. I always say like kids are the best beta testers because of their unfiltered feedback. I remember early Connect days and, watching the researcher ask the kid if they would prefer Connect or their iPad, and they, pick their iPad, of course, which was really, really great. But, kids are great because they haven't sort of walled themselves in yet. A lot of things sort of happen even on a skill basis. If you're someone like me, you've been doing this for a long time, and someone shows you an interface and you think, well, how is that going to work when it's localized? Or what are you going to do about colorblind? Or what, you have all of these buts that kind of come up. But that's only because like, as we get older, we sort of build these sort of walls of like, well, what about this? What about that? There's nothing wrong with that. But it's really amazing when you can like actually share and talk with kids because they haven't built those walls up yet. And, they may think what you're doing is absolutely awesome, or they may think it's absolutely doesn't make any sense at all, right? But they're just so much more likely to give you that unfiltered feedback. So I always tell people, if you think you have a great idea, find a kid and you may get some new insights. Another thing to really think about, something I was thinking about years ago, was like, how is your interface going to be affected by data? Like we're going to have a lot of data-driven, AI-driven interfaces, I think, in the future. And how's that going to affect like the systems and things that you're designing and looking at now? I think there's going to be a lot of stuff we can learn from that. So just to leave you with some things, tips and tricks for the Innovator class is begin with curiosity, really. Like just be curious about how things work, how things could get better, how things used to work. Seek out challenges, look at things that you think you probably could never, ever do. And realize that you're probably a lot closer than you think. Be proactive, find other people who are proactive and take a stab at things, even if you're just prototyping, and take different paths. Don't be afraid to try different things, different industries, and bring your love of like interface design and things with you on those paths. And just remember these top secret ingredients. No one knows what they're doing. Trust me, no one knows what they're doing. People use a lot of big words, but I think the next big thing is just as likely to come from a 12-year-old and one of us than someone who's been in the industry for 30 or 40 years. Human focus is often ignored. Like go back and look at your human issues when you're dealing with this stuff. Don't ignore present models. What's working well? Are there ways you can kind of transfer the way people work with technology now into the future that'll make that bridge a little bit easier? Systematic design is key. You want to be able to adapt. So the more kind of systematic design that you have in place, the easier it's going to be for your interface to adapt to all the new things that'll be coming out. And just remember, pass. If you want to pass legal, then you want to ship this thing. Remember, about privacy, accessibility, security, and safety, and think about those things sort of on a feature level. And last but not least, think beyond everything or you think take one step beyond that and think about things that maybe no one else is thinking about. And I don't know, you might be pretty surprised what you come up with. So my only action item for everyone here is just continue what you're doing, research past gaps, learn about the present, and, create what's going to be kind of in the beyond, right? Like that's kind of where we are. We have so many great tools and so much opportunity. There's so many ways to communicate, connect with different people. Make sure you, look at not just people in your country, but other countries who are doing similar work. There's just so much to learn and so many ways you can grow. So that is it. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. People have questions.
Great, thank you. Charisma. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. If there are questions, you can put those into the chat, or if you want to raise your hand. I think we only have a couple of minutes, but we might be able to get a few of those. I do have one comment that came in from Dr. Giovanni Vicenti at the University of Baltimore. And he said he's second that nobody knows what they're doing. They are guesses that are more educated than others, but in the end, it's all about applied interest. And then Israel said that he loves the metaphors that you used in your presentation. From your experience, what are some of the biggest compares and contrasts from AR, VR UI and game UI?
Well, I think the awesome thing about gaming is we kind of been ahead on a lot of this stuff, right? Because in gaming, you kind of get to do all the stuff and not worry about it working all the way. Same thing with movies. Movies has done a lot of this stuff too, where it looks really awesome. But once you start to look at practical application, it gets to be a much harder problem to solve. In gaming, we still control a lot of things. That's why I think a lot of our big step has been going, a lot of us go from gaming to VR, because in VR, we get to control a lot more as well. And audio also becomes really important in VR. AR gets to be even more complicated. So what you're seeing is a lot of people go from gaming and movies into VR and then into AR. So we're taking what we learn and all this stuff, and we're just building on it. So any companies you see today that are big in VR, I can guarantee you that they're using their learnings from VR to grow and expand their AR. Because for us, we see AR as something like mobile, where there's going to be everyone's going to be involved with AR. VR is going to be kind of like console and gaming, or there'll be a hardcore following and that stuff, but majority of people we know are going to be using AR. So AR has to be the most usable, but it's also the most challenging. So that's why you sort of see that build that's happening.
All right, I have a couple of hands raised. I see Sam and then Riley, and I think that's all the time we'll have for two questions real quick. So Sam?
Hi, Sam here. So in terms of accessibility, how often are you either limited by your team size or your time constraints, and how do you juggle that between making a product as accessible as possible with research or consulting with experienced people who you might not have expected to need to use your products?
Yeah, so I think as an industry, we've sort of had a good refresh in this area. We've been not so good at it, to be honest. But now I know at Microsoft, it's becoming sort of part of the core tenets you need to ship a product out. So along with privacy and security, you're not going to ship a product out if you're not hitting sort of like a bar for accessibility that the company has now set moving forward. You see it a lot in gaming as well. Because the business knows that the more accessible, the wider the product can reach more people and will thus be more revenue coming in, right? What we've learned, though, is that if you don't think about accessibility and things as you're building out, it becomes really, really hard to sort of patch it on at the end. We know that patching on at the end doesn't work. So really, as you're developing from a feature by feature standpoint, you really should be already sort of consulting with accessibility experts, security experts, and things of that nature on a feature by feature sort of cadence as you're building stuff out, so that you don't end up building something out that ends up being just you have to almost undo the whole thing, right? So for us, we sort of are getting that built into our product pipeline, and the teams that address it early and often are going to do much better than the teams who have to kind of go back and address stuff that they've already sort of built. So I think to answer your question is that it's sort of becoming just mandatory because now, especially with laws in the EU who are kind of ahead of us, but it's kind of illegal almost to, launch things that are not usable for a wider audience.
All right, and Riley, if you'll ask your question, but while you're doing that, if everyone would like to pop on their camera, I'll do another picture real quick, and we'll get a picture with Charisma, if that's okay with you, Charisma.
Sure.
Awesome. Riley?
Yeah, hey there. First off, I want to say I love the presentation, SpongeBob Pictures, but also that, so one of the challenges we're running into with our design was just there's a lot out there on user interface design, but not so much on AR and working with HoloLens or Magic Leap. So what ways do you see this platform fundamentally changing user interface design? You know, 'cause there's a lot more to work with now.
Yeah, I think one of the big sort of changes that I see is I think in the beginning everyone was sort of designing around like very focused scenarios. Like, yeah, this AR interface works really, really well for teaching someone how to change a tire, right? But what I think is going to sort of happen is something that we've seen in other sort of interface examples over like the centuries and decades as we've moved into new technology, is people sort of taking a step back and looking at systematically what does an interface need. Like there's notifications, there's certain menu elements, there's how you select things. So really taking a step back and looking at like what are the foundational pieces of an interface, no matter what platform you're on, and then understanding how to translate those foundational pieces into AR. And so until we could take that step back, it's going to be, I think, we're going to see some struggles. And so we haven't really defined some of the foundational stuff that we've defined for, like, for example, how to use a mouse, right? Which has worked so well for decades. But there's a lot of sort of like studies behind that and why you position certain things on the screen in certain areas that we haven't really sort of figured out yet with AR. So I think it's looking and focusing on some of those universal aspects. Like, can you come up with some design things that work no matter what kind of application you're designing, and then sort of building on that and going from there.
Thank you, Charisma, so much. We really appreciate your time and you sharing your experience and knowledge with us today. I'm going to take a photo, and then I've actually got to run to an appointment. But I know that if you would like, you still have a question or a comment, you can stick around for a few minutes. My team will stay on here until everyone leaves. But thank you all for joining us in this session. For all of our speakers today, thank you. And we look forward to seeing all of you in the poster sessions. I did pop the link into this chat in case you were looking for it. And then we'll have our Artemis panel. We have a very special panel for you, including astronaut Tom Marshburn will be there. Brian Johnson with EVA office will be there. We have Stephanie Cipolla, who's the Stratcom for EVA office. And then we also have Brian Alpert, who is the Human Landing Systems Integration Lead for the EVA office. Without further ado, let's do our picture. All right, everyone smile. 3, 2, 1. All right, I think I got it. Let me snap it there. Boom. Picture. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.